Hi, I'm Steve with the Women's Self-Defense Community. Today we're having a discussion about campus safety. And before we go any further, allow me to introduce our panel today. First, we have Brad Parker. Brad is an instructor for women's self-defense, police defensive tactics, and tactical firearms. He is also the founder of the Women's Self-Defense Community. Tracy Arlington is a nationally certified women's self-defense instructor and is the owner of Play It Safe Defense. She has taught thousands of women and teens over the last 17 years and has appeared on the Dr. Phil and Dr. TV shows as a children's self-defense expert. Shannon Mahoney is a multidisciplined fighter who has harnessed her own training and life experiences to counsel and train women how to defend themselves and find their own strengths. Heather Wall is a karate world champion who teaches women's self-defense, Kali, karate, and defensive handgun techniques. She is the founder of the women's improvement group, Moxie Up. Okay, so let's get into it. Currently, we are in the red zone. I'd like to ask Brad to help us understand that term and what that means for young women living in a college campus environment. Brad?
Well, thanks, Steve. One of the things that recently we start hearing about is the red zone, but we've been talking about that for a while, which is statistically speaking, perhaps the most dangerous time in a young woman's life is the very first semester of the very first year in college. Specifically, the time when you first get on campus to Thanksgiving break could be when your risk of sexual assault is the highest. More than half of all sexual assaults are said to take place on campus between August and November. And because of your age group, you're typically going to be 18 to 24, you're actually 3 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than other females in your age group. Now, here's what I want to get across throughout all of these panel discussions. Simply being female puts you at risk of sexual assault. So when we talk about higher risk, remember that it never goes away. But in this particular case, we're going to be talking about why this is so critical for a young woman's life. Now, the reason these kind of statistics give us a sense of what your risk is, it's because at this time, most women or young women are away from home for the first time in their life. They may not have had as much experience as older women typically do. They might be experimenting with breaking the rules. And in this environment, you're dealing with a population that is half is male, and they're also in your age group of 18 to 24. Statistically speaking, there are a certain segment of young men in this age bracket that they actually consider it to be okay to rape someone if they could get away with it. That's how they've responded on a number of studies. So you are going to be participating in a lot of social activities. You have a strong pull to feel like I want to belong in this new group, new friends. And typically these social activities are going to involve alcohol. So that's the lay of the land. Steve?
Well, thank you very much for that, Brad. Is there anyone else who would like to add to what Brad has said about the college environment?
I think,
okay. Shannon.
I think Brad summed it up very well, explaining what that red zone is and the timing, and especially the sense of freedom that both men and women feel as they go off to college. So that's important, that sense of freedom, and especially for the women, young women, you are allowed that sense of freedom. And we want you to have that sense of freedom. But I think what we're going to talk about here today is what's really important for you to know to keep that freedom under the umbrella of safety.
Yes, Tracy.
Yeah, and just knowing that the term fresh meat was created because freshmen are targeted the most. You know, people know that freshmen are more vulnerable. They are trying to fit in, and they don't know the limit when it comes to drinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, Heather.
You know, something that occurs to me also is just the fact that you're in a whole new environment, possibly the first time you've been away from home. You may not have any friends that you know or can trust, which is really, really important to have a support group around you when you're going out and about. And so this is, you really have to be especially careful because you don't really know, well, like you said, boundaries. You don't know your boundaries, but even more than that, you don't even understand what the possibilities could be, you know.
Absolutely. Sure. Okay, thank you all for that. Really appreciate it. I'd like to turn next to Tracy, who's going to help us better understand the campus safety issue with some rather eye-opening statistics and also what protections and rights Title IX gives you. Tracy?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I have 2 college-age sons, and I would not have let them leave for college without knowing the reality of this, because it happens to guys too. They say about 23% of females are sexually assaulted through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. And you have to remember too, when we say sexual assault, it could be anything from, you know, somebody grabbing your breast or slapping you on the butt to, you know, the worst, full-blown rape. But also guys, 5.4% of males report sexual assault, and that's reported because, I mean, think about it, most guys probably don't report it. I know at Cal State San Marcos here in California, their statistics shows 1 in 16 guys are sexually assaulted. And that's usually same-sex relationships. So it is common with both females and males. So this is what I want you to know. First of all, you've got to know your rights. The yes means yes law is a law that's very common in California. You need to Google your state to see, but typically for years we've been teaching you no means no. Well, the yes means yes law says that if you have to give consent. So if somebody wants to kiss you, they have to ask you. If they want to do something beyond kissing, they have to ask you the next step. And then the next time you go out on a date, they have to start all over again asking you for consent. Now, if alcohol or date rape drugs are involved, if the person is incapacitated or under the influence, it is by law non-consensual, and that can go both ways, male or female. So girls, guys, you need to know that, you know, having sex, you know, really is kind of like signing a contract, you know, and you need to be fully capacitated. You need to know what you're doing before you sign that contract, so to speak. If something happens, it's really important that you become familiar with this term, Title IX coordinator. Every college campus by law has a Title IX coordinator that you can report anything from sex discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual assault to this person, and then they will provide the proper resources for you. And let me just wrap this up with a really quick story that broke my heart. I have a friend whose daughter went off to college, and she was called over to go to a study group. She got there, and there were about 4 or 5 guys there. Her friends weren't there. She asked, hey, you know, where are the girls? The guys said, oh, they're on their way. They gave her a drink. Next thing you know, she woke up the next day in her dorm room, and they had drugged her with GHB, which is fast acting, and we'll get into that later. They had raped her. She was so incapacitated that she stayed in bed for 2 days. Yep, and we'll get into it later. This stuff doesn't stay in your system very long. So she thought because she didn't have any proof or evidence or witnesses that she couldn't report them. And she ended up leaving college, and she's going through a lot of she's going through a lot of therapy right now. The sad part was if she had only known about the yes means yes law, she could have reported that, hopefully to the police and her Title IX coordinator, and those guys would have been arrested and hopefully prosecuted.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all that, Tracy. That's great information. Is there anybody else who would like to add to that? Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on next. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the the tools of the predator, if you will. And Tracy actually touched on this a little bit. Shannon, could you talk to us about the role of alcohol and date rape drugs and how they play into the actions of a predator looking for a target?
Sure. I like your use of the word tools. There are many, and I think also continuing on with Tracy's yes means yes, it's also under the influence of alcohol or a drug, whether it's you take it yourself or someone has drugged you, if you are unable to say the word yes, then you are not in the capacity to join in a sexual encounter. So silence means no, basically. I think that's really important for boys and men to understand, that if the girl you're with cannot say the word yes, then she's not of full capacity. The facts are the facts, and I love talking about prevention and awareness and everything that can possibly happen in this red zone time area. But I also think the most important thing we can do is give you some information on action. So there's a big difference between 1 to 2 to 3 drinks. Factually, that second to third drink is the window of opportunity. If a boy is approaching you, if a girl is approaching you, so I'm not trying to be sex driven here, but I'm going to use the boy girl example for what I'm talking about. Once the predator sees that you've gone from that second to third drink, there is a significant physical chemistry in the body that happens. So your ability to defend yourself is greatly decreased. Whether it's someone does a couple of shots and says, oh, it was just 2 shots and now I'm having another drink, you're already there. So within a matter of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you could be, physically at that point of you are unable to fully physically defend yourself, and mentally you're altered. Your decision-making abilities are decreased. Your perceptions are decreased. It's important to know that the date rape drugs can be anything from getting the Rohypnol, those specific drugs that you hear about as date rape drugs, but it's way more than that. And it could be 3 Benadryl just popped open in a liquid capsule. That's enough, mixed in with alcohol. It can be any over-the-counter sleep aid. It can be, really anything that anyone can get their hands on that is tasteless. So Benadryl is tasteless, but the sleep aids, they will melt in the drink. So it's not just the guy that finds the other bad guy dealer. It's he can stop at Walgreens and get whatever he wants. So what you need to know is, how do I know if I've been drugged? I'm very surprised that girls are very educated on, oh yeah, they can slip something in your drink. I'm gonna take my drink to the bathroom with me. I'm never gonna leave my drink alone. I'm not even gonna have my friend hold my drink because she's not responsible for me. I'm only responsible for myself, okay? So you can do all of that. But having the knowledge of all of a sudden, you go from feeling a little tipsy to very unstable, almost unable to speak, stand up, walk, hold yourself up, anything, okay? And when that happens, you have most likely been drugged. Even doing a couple of drinks right in a row, a couple of shots, most girls, that's not going to put you on the ground, unable to speak, unable to move, okay? So when you've been drugged, that's when you are almost completely incapacitated and you haven't done anything to equal that physical reaction. If that happens, you need to find somebody safe, tell them how you're feeling. Hopefully that could be a friend that you're with, or it could be the guy working the door, the bartender. You need to find somebody safe. Can you get in trouble going to the hospital after being drugged? No. Okay. A lot of girls will just say, no, just take me home, I'll be fine. No, you're not going to be fine. You've got a drug in your system, and the person that did it needs to be found. Okay. So I'm going to encourage you to report it. So maybe 1 out of every 10 girls who's assaulted might report it. Why? Because, well, we can get into that. We have a million different things we can talk about. Let me stick with the results of going to get help. You will not get in trouble. You will only be helping the police, Title IX, campus safety. You will only be helping them make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody else. But you do need medical attention. You want to find out what has happened, what is in your system. It usually lasts between 48 to 72 hours. You may not have any recollection of anything that happens in case you do wake up, like Tracy's story of not remembering what happened and waking up in another place. But again, it's really hard to accept the fact that someone else will intentionally want to do that to you, but it's a fact, right? So 50% of victims of a sexual assault in the red zone have been drinking. Should you be able to go drink when you go to college? You should be able to do whatever you want. It's your right, but you need to do it safely, right? So you need to have your buddy system. You need to have, there are so many actions that I think that's going to lead into our next video, but there are so many actions that you guys can all do to stay safe. But one of those is knowing the signs of being drugged. It's that complete and very, very fast incapacitation where maybe your girlfriend will say, oh, you're such a lightweight. No, you've been drugged. Okay, so it goes that quick. And then the statistics about your predators, 3 out of 4 of them have been drinking. So inhibitions are down, let's just go for it. So I think that kind of wraps up what I'd want to talk about today, and the awareness of physically what happens to you. Also, in a nutshell, it's never your fault. You can do everything right. You can keep your drink with you. You can have your friend hold your drink, which I talked about before. They can't be responsible for you. You need to be responsible for yourself. You can do all that right, but something can still get slipped to you in many different ways. But just knowing, follow your instinct. Your instinct is never wrong. If you feel like something is wrong and something has happened, most likely it has. Get help, get safety, and report it.
Okay, thank you so much, Shannon. Appreciate it. Given that, Heather, maybe we could ask you to maybe give us some tips, some thoughts about what young women can do to be aware of their situations, to what things they can look out for, what things they should perhaps do, things like that. Maybe you could talk on that.
I can touch on it. It's tough. There's so many options. And I think that these predators are getting smarter and figuring out new ways all the time. I would kind of narrow it down to 3 things. I mean, and really Shannon touched on a couple of them, and that is the drink is only yours if it's in your hand. When I work with girls, that's what I tell them. Once it leaves your hand, it is no longer yours. Don't go back to it. Being very careful, and be careful where you accept a drink from. You can't, just because the little bottle goes snap, they're getting around that stuff these days. You have to be very, very careful. If you can, I would bring your beverages with you. I think that the other biggest one I really think is your friends. You have to have good friends, which can be really hard when you are going off to college for the first time, and maybe you didn't have friends that came to the same college that you came to. You're going to have to find new friends, but you need friends that can be there, because like Shannon was saying, is that stuff is very fast acting. You don't want a friend that's like, oh, you're such a lightweight, never mind, you're fine, don't don't pay attention. You need friends that are going to be there for you, that are watching out for you, and that you do the same for them. Possibly choosing somebody who is your designated, maybe not driver, but your designated friend that's watching out for you guys that night, and taking turns doing that. That can be hard sometimes to find a good friend that way, but it's really important to have kind of a core group that watches out for you. And then being aware of what's going on. When you enter any place, kind of have an idea of who's there. In a situation like your friend, Tracy was talking about her friend, and she got there and there was all guys and no girls. Her alarm bell did go off, but she was young and she just didn't really think, she didn't know. So take that stuff into consideration. I'm sure everybody here has a real good comment of what their thoughts would be as to do or not to do. There are so many options, but for me, be aware, have friends around you that are watching out for you, just like you watch out for them, and stay in control of what you consume.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much, Heather. And we've had a lot of great discussion so far. I'd like to go around the room to the panel once again for any final thoughts on anything else you'd like to get out there for young ladies to think about. And Tracy, maybe I could start with you.
I was just going to add that, believe it or not, I actually know one of my instructors was at a party where a girl, she was the sober sister. So she was in charge of not drinking and watching out for everyone. And she was drugged, true story. They had put a powdered form of a drug on a piece of gum and she passed out. And my instructor actually saw the guy dragging her off to a bedroom and he intervened and they actually almost got in a fight. And then the predator left the party. So we are hearing that they can add those drugs to the vape pens. You know, they can marijuana, anything like that. So it's not, you know, not just a drink. And I love that Heather and Shannon both said, you know what, bring your own drink. I always tell my students, bring your own container. You know, so bring a flip top and you can fill it up with whatever you want. And then know how to say no. And that might, or no thank you. That might mean role playing that and practicing that with your friend before you leave the party.
Yes, Heather.
Such a good comment, Tracy. Know how to say no, practice saying no. You've got to have that because it's got to be comfortable. And, you know, with a little bit of practice, it can be creative too.
And confident.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shannon, any thoughts?
I would go right off of that with the practicing saying no. Often in my classes, I would ask a girl, if you don't want to hug this guy, why are you hugging him? And their answer is, well, I don't want him to think that I'm being a bitch. But girls, I'm giving you complete permission to be the bitch. You have plenty of friends. You're going to make plenty of friends. And the people that insist on pushing that boundary and envelope with you, you don't need them as your friends. So yeah, that would be my last little add on that. Very important, very important.
Thank you so much for that. Brad, what do you think?
Well, what a great panel, because we covered a lot here, but if I can leave the viewers with one thing, this is a huge problem.
Yes.
We're not blowing it out of proportion. Rape and sexual assault historically is a problem. And you going to college in the US, the UK, it's the same thing. The risk is still there. Australian co-eds have the same exact problem. In fact, theirs is even more concentrated. Apparently in their school year, they have a thing called Orientation Week that is it's designed to be more social and get people to interact very quick. But almost 1 in 8 of the sexual assaults that occur in colleges in the Sydney school system are in the first week. The first week. So this is not something that can go away, and we want to empower you. We are not victim blaming here, but you are responsible for yourself. And I would like to see people role play And I'd like to see people getting comfortable with saying no, as you said. So the bottom line comes down to being aware of the problem and getting training to solve the problems. We want you to be smarter, we want you to be stronger, and we want you to be safer.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Take,
Thank you very
take
much.
a self-defense class. If you don't take it before college, take one when you get there.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up our discussion for today. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their time and guidance. This is our first discussion on the subjects of women's self-defense and in particular campus safety. Please do check back frequently for updates on our website, womenselfdefensecommunity.com, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.